It was expensive, protecting you from the French and the Indians. Now you must pay.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Coach Thornberry. I am a high school history teacher from the U.S. state of Georgia. This will be our first video over Standard 3. Standard 3 covers the American Revolution. This first video will look into the French and Indian War. When we left off in the colonial unit, we talked about how British policies on who the colonies could trade with were relaxed in a period we call salutary neglect. In this video, we'll talk about how that relaxing of trade policies all went away with the conclusion of the French and Indian War. The text for Standard 3 is, Analyze the causes of the American Revolution. Simple enough. The specific standard we're looking at is, explain how the French and Indian War and the 1763 Treaty of Paris laid the groundwork for the American Revolution. Our essential vocab for this lesson is the French and Indian War, the 1763 Treaty of Paris, and the Proclamation of 1763. Let's start with some background. Both England and France had a rivalry that dated back to the 1000 CE, literally a 1,000-year-old rivalry. Beginning in 1689, England and France fought a series of wars for control over Europe and colonial trade. The French and Indian War was the culmination of these wars. The war began in North America as a result of the ongoing British-American expansion into the Ohio River Valley, which was also claimed by France. The French and their American Indian allies wanted to prevent further settlement in the disputed region west of the Appalachian Mountains. In the 1750s, the French built a fort in the Ohio River Valley, which was also claimed by Virginia. As a result, George Washington, serving in the British military, started his military campaign with orders to evict the French in 1754. What ended up happening is a series of battles that resulted in the defeat of Washington and his army. Now for the elephant in the room. If you know anything about American history, you know who George Washington is. You might not know that his first adventure in military leadership was an absolute failure. His redemption in the Revolution is an incredible story that we will tell in later lessons. At the beginning of the war, France was definitely winning. France and its many native allies fought as a coalition and won many of the original battles. The war became known as the French and Indian War because the British were fighting against the French and the Indians. Early British losses disappointed the colonists, and they began to question the competence of the British Army. King George II, enraged by these losses, appointed William Pitt the new colonial leader. William Pitt reinvigorated the British Army and helped lead the British to victory over the French. As a side note, the French and Indian War is what sparked the 7 Years' War that was fought between France and Britain and various other allies across the world. There was fighting on every continent but Australia and Antarctica. Some historians consider this the First World War. Now let's go back to British North America. The 1763 Treaty of Paris was the negotiated settlement that ended the French and Indian War. Its provisions forced France to turn over control of all of Canada and claims to all land east of the Mississippi River to Great Britain, with the exception of the city of New Orleans. The end of the French and Indian War brought Great Britain benefits. The British were now in control of one of the largest empires in the world and were in a dominant position in Europe. Right after the conclusion of the French and Indian War, the American Indian chief Pontiac and the Ottawa Nation led a coalition of Native Americans in an attempt to drive out the British and American colonists from the region they had just won in the French and Indian War. Thousands of British soldiers were killed in what became known as Pontiac's Rebellion. The rebellion was concluded with the help of the Iroquois Confederacy and skillful diplomacy. Parliament passed the Proclamation of 1763 in an attempt to prevent any more colonists from settling beyond the Appalachian Mountains to prevent more conflict with Native Americans. The Proclamation of 1763 was essentially a line that went across the Appalachian Mountains that colonists were not allowed to cross. This new law angered the colonists because they believed they were entitled to all this land that had been won in the French and Indian War. They saw the British Crown as working directly against their interest. On the flip side, the British monarchy was concerned about more conflict with Native Americans because of the humongous debt that was incurred from the French and Indian War. Britain was unable to enforce the Proclamation of 1763 due to the vast amount of land in the region and the shortage of troops to patrol. The colonists ignored the law and settled in the Ohio River Valley anyway. 70 years of fighting various wars had nearly bankrupted the British government. The French and Indian War had more than doubled the British national debt. As a result, Great Britain had heavy taxation, high inflation, and high unemployment. The British government hoped to lower colonial administrative costs by creating new taxes for the colonies and enforcing existing trade laws. Essentially, Britain planned to tax the colonies in order to pay for the debt caused by the French and Indian War. Sounds reasonable. I mean, Americans love new taxes. These taxes included the Sugar Act of 1763. The new law also created vice admiralty courts, which tried suspected smugglers before a military court instead of a civilian court. This new measure angered American colonial importers who chose to ignore the new laws. The spoils of victory were not enjoyed by the colonists, who believed their militia had contributed greatly to the British military success in the French and Indian War. As a result, the tension created by the French and Indian War and the 1763 Treaty of Paris, and also the 1763 Proclamation, laid the groundwork for the American Revolution.
Whatever you colonists do, whatever you do, do not throw the tea in the harbor!
I gotta say, harbor is a tough word to say in a British accent. In the next video, we'll start to look at the specific causes of the American Revolution that happened in between the French and Indian War and the start of the American Revolution. If you're a history nerd who's into American history, get ready, the good stuff's about to start. Until next time, keep it real and take it easy.